Bree, what's wrong with your voice? I guess I had yoga voice. Mature as I thought I was at the time, no, I was so young. Youthful enthusiasm, because in my 20s, I really thought I knew a lot. I thought I was so smart. The poses that you don't like are the poses that you need. I was willing to keep growing, and I wanted to keep growing. And growing and evolving isn't easy, and it's messy, and it's uncomfortable. And so this is why I think a lot of people don't evolve and grow, because it's way easier to stay as we are.
Welcome back to the podcast. My name is Ula.
And I'm Brie Johnson with my podcast voice.
Oh, I love the podcast voice. I got a new mic. I don't know if anyone can tell, but I feel like it makes my voice deeper and better as well. Exactly. So, okay. We are going to talk about what you got wrong as a new yoga teacher. Now, you have 2 decades of experience, so you're going to have to think back, but also, I also think because you teach teacher training every single year, I feel like you probably come across with the students stuff that they're like, ooh, I shouldn't have done that, or like the questions. So that's kind of why I want to dig into this one. And I'm going to start with an easy one. Looking back on some of your first classes, I always like asking, what was like a super cringe moment? And like, what do you laugh about now? Like thinking about you as a new teacher.
So many things. So many things. Because again, so not only was I a new teacher, I was 23 years old, and that was a baby. It was a wee babe, fresh in the world, and as mature as I thought I was at the time. No, I was so young. And so there's 2 things that make me cringe with care and respect and love. But the funny one was, so again, I did my yoga teacher training at an ashram in the Shivananda tradition. So that's the Shivananda ashram. And in Shivananda, they teach you mantras and beautiful Sanskrit mantras. And there's a teaching one that you sing before you teach. And so I just spent a month at the ashram and stuff, and okay, this is what, not that I actually taught Shivananda much once I got graduated or certified, but I loved the mantras. And so there was the teaching one. I couldn't tell you what it was called or any of the words, because this was over 2 decades ago, but it was long. So I remember my classes in those early days, I'd start as an earnest young teacher, and I would sing this long Sanskrit mantra. I know in Ashtanga, if anybody's done it, you sing that one, and it's like a call and response, if I'm remembering correctly, and it's just shorter. This one, all I can remember, it just felt like it was 10 minutes. It wasn't, but felt like 10 minutes of the class of your teacher singing this long thing. Little young me. And so I eventually stopped doing that. Again, this was 2003. Yoga was starting to get more popular, but not that popular. And I'm sure people were like, what is happening? Okay, so I don't do that anymore necessarily. Not that that's bad. P.S. So just FYI, mantra is wonderful. That's an important part of bhakti yoga, that side of the yoga tradition. But it's definitely not something I do anymore as a teacher. And then another one is the classic yoga voice. So I guess I had yoga voice. As we like our podcast voice, so that's actually really funny that we instinctively did that. And I didn't know I was doing it because I was being a good teacher. This is what a yoga teacher sounds like, until the owner of the studio came to me one time to one of my classes. And afterwards she was like, Bree, what's wrong with your voice?
Stop.
She was also somebody like that. I know. And very assertive, she's like, Bree, what's wrong with your voice? I'm like, what are you talking about? She's like, you have yoga teacher voice. And I was like, what? She's like, you don't sound like you. And I was like, oh. And then, I'm listening to myself in subsequent classes going, oh, right. I had adopted unconsciously, hello, step your right foot forward. Just whatever the things I'm saying in that floaty sort of yoga teacher voice. And so absolutely still having my professional voice. It's still me. It's still you as the teacher. So I think those are the 2 off the top of my head cringy things that I did, which I think is pretty normal because we get taught what we're taught and we're excited and we want to repeat it. And we don't trust ourselves enough to be like, should I be singing a 10-minute long Sanskrit mantra at the beginning of the class? Maybe not. should I talk in my normal voice? Probably.
Yeah, it's interesting. My partner, he's just starting med school right now. And yesterday on our walk, he was telling me his like acronyms for when you're assessing someone. So they're practicing that right now. And I practiced with them. So he, asks like, where does it hurt? How long has it? And what he said was the guy teaching them this was honest that he doesn't use it every time, but you need somewhere to start. And as someone new to something, it does make sense that you probably have to learn a process or you have to just to get you started. But does that mean you don't learn over time and adapt and grow? And as you grow with confidence, then you begin to learn your own way of doing something. So it's not wrong, but it can kind of sound like weird and not you. So when he's practicing with me, I'm just like, dude, this does not sound like you. It's like so weird to hear. Like you would never ask the question that way, not normally, but they just have to start somewhere.
That's a good point. And that's a fair point. And I think that's like, because there's a safety net there. It's a framework, it's a foundation that you just keep practicing. And that's why I quite often in our trainings tell people like, go ahead and steal my sequences. I don't care, because everybody who does our teacher training gets a membership into the Heart Bones online studio. And so it's like, I'm always like, go do my classes. And actually anybody listening to this, if you're a member of the Heart Bones online studio, you're allowed to steal the sequences. Because that's a beautiful way to practice. Like, I don't care. I don't I use my experience. And then eventually, as you're saying with that example, Ula, exactly, eventually find your voice through it. But doing something tried and true makes sense.
We've talked on past podcasts, like, some of the, I don't even know if it's a podcast. It might have been your YouTube video. I edit those sometimes. So I'm like, oh, was that a podcast for YouTube? But you're talking about, the lineages, like there's a reason certain practices are popular. They're kind of like tested over, however many thousands of practitioners and years and all this kind of stuff. And there's a reason that they work. So yeah, it's kind of like, yeah, it works for a reason. It doesn't mean you have to do it for the rest of forever. So, okay. So those were the cringy moments. What about some of the like air quotes rules you thought you had to follow as a new teacher, but now you look back and you think you feel differently about it?
Well, can I just say one more cringy thing that I remembered? And then I'll answer.
Yes, always bring the cringe.
Is a little like, I used to repeat. So this is the other thing I think, as we like talking about things that are working. So steal my sequences or say the thing and then make it your own. But then there's that layer of repeating things that your teachers might have told you, that might have said that you don't question. And so I just remembered one thing that I had learned from a teacher. And he used to say, like, the poses that you don't like are the poses that you need. And I know. And I used to say that. And because I'm like, oh, yeah, that's so true. Yes, totally. And then the beautiful thing is growing and evolving over time and going towards more inclusive practices. I'm like, oh, Lord, maybe the poses that you don't like aren't the poses that you need because they
are the ones you don't need.
Yeah, because a way to like gaslight people into not trusting the wisdom of their body. And sometimes that's also true because I think I think sayings like that aren't inherently wrong because I bet there is some true, like, do I like, I strength train a lot and dumbbell thrusters do not like, but they're really good, but they're a lot of work or whatever. Like, so it's like, I don't like it, but it's good for my body. But the difference is that sort of like well-meaning sentence of like the poses you don't like are the poses that you need is also, again, a little bit gaslighty and being like, don't listen to your body's wisdom.
It's funny. It's like they're like the Pinterest quote style thing where you're like, hustle harder. If you don't like it, you need to push through and do it anyway. It's funny because I'm doing the artist's way right now, as you know, and every week we have tasks assigned to us and the author says to aim for completing about 50% of them and do the ones that you are really pulled towards and then do the ones that you're repelled by. And I can see it almost has that same vibe, but maybe it's just maturity that makes me it's about like questioning it a little bit, like why am I being like repelled by this, the why behind it. And so when you make these like big blanket statements, it doesn't leave room for the questioning of like, am I avoiding this because it's hurting me? Or am I avoiding this because, yeah, maybe I do sit in a chair all day and it is tight and I don't want to do that, right? And it's like, actually, I do really need to do that because I am sitting in a chair all day. So it's like the nuance, and unfortunately, nuance is just like not as sexy. It's just easier to say the one liner you could put on a Pinterest board, right? So
Yeah, good points. Because what was the question that I didn't answer?
oh yeah, what was the question? The question was, what were the rules you thought you had to follow, but now you're like, you feel differently about it?
I think it's more the classic unconscious rules that were who a yoga teacher is and how does a yoga teacher behave. I don't think anybody explicitly taught me this, but I think at the beginning adopted like, well, I should be getting on my yoga mat every single day for an hour because now that I'm a yoga teacher, I should be doing XYZ. And this is what my practice should look like. And I shouldn't be doing that and all these things. And I don't think that story lasted too long with me because I don't do well again with shoulds. There's always a point where I'm like, don't tell me what to do. It was the reflective of that yoga teacher voice. So it was less about the specific things I was taught, though there was a ton of stuff that I was taught that I threw out pretty quickly because as I want to be a responsive teacher in my classes, it's like, oh yeah, right. Okay, that pose isn't saying that, isn't doing that. But nonetheless, I think there's also just a layer for me of like youthful enthusiasm because in my 20s, I really thought I knew a lot. I thought I was so smart and like so on things in life. And I don't know if I've shared this before, but it's hilarious just to show that like the yoga teacher person that I was. I remember my early 20s. I think I remember like being under the stars in the forest with a friend one time and we're like, talking deep things and the life and this is the meaning of life and what is it all, and I remember saying, wow, if we understand this now, what are we going to be like in like 10 years? And that's always stayed with me because now I go back and I'm like, holy Jesus.
If anything,
Christ,
I know
Brie.
how much less I know.
I know the hubris of youth. And then, and then now I'm teaching yoga and I'm like, so I don't think I was to be fair though, to myself, I don't think that came into my teaching too much. I don't think it was too hubristic, if that's a word, but yeah. So I don't know, new teacher combined being in my 20s. I'm grateful being in my mid 40s and 2 decades of experience underneath. I'm just more like, whatever, do what you want, enjoy, breathe, have fun, let's laugh. Yay. I don't know everything. Yay.
Yeah, I guess that comes with time and comfort too, right? Like with comfort, like learning that you don't know everything. Do you think that there were earlier mistakes that you did that kind of shaped the teacher that you became now?
There was probably a series of many mistakes. Small, like looking back and just like, because nothing off the top of my head big, like, oh my God, I did the one thing at the one time and shit, now it's everything, I changed everything. I think it's cumulative. I think it's like all those hours just spent teaching, all those hours just in the room with other people and hearing maybe feedback from other people, good and bad, and hearing how and seeing how classes land or cues land. And, I think so at the core of that means like I was willing to keep growing and I wanted to keep growing, and growing and evolving isn't easy and it's messy and it's uncomfortable. And so this is why I think a lot of people don't evolve and grow, because it's way easier to stay as we are. And especially as a teacher in that public role where you might have said, even with good intentions don't always equal impact. You might have said something that was like not great, even with good intentions. And it's like, and that's uncomfortable. That's uncomfortable to get that feedback, or that's uncomfortable to know that you sort of unintentionally made a mistake, so to speak. But it's in that discomfort is where the growth comes. And so that's just going to happen as a human being who's willing to grow. It's going to happen as a yoga teacher, and also discerning when feedback is good and constructive and when it's not. That was a painful lesson for me, actually, at times where I would get feedback from students through the grapevine or however, and I had and definitely would react and be like, what? How dare they? who's this, this whole story in my head, and then having to come to the realization of going, well, wait a second, is that somebody's opinion, or is that like, or is that me? So if this feedback was like, oh, Bree's classes are, let me just try to think for a second, because I remember one time in particular, but I can't quite remember what the feedback was specifically, but I remember my reaction to it. So let's just say it was something around the way that I was teaching and what I was teaching. And this was right in the early days of also switching my teaching over into more anatomy informed, and people weren't totally ready for it. I wasn't super smooth at it either, right? I had to learn how to get comfortable with shifting my teaching. So it was a really challenging time. And so whatever the feedback was, I remember lying in bed, having a whole entire argument and conversation with this student in my head and being like, meh, 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 and then finally coming to the moment of being like, wait, this is actually somebody's opinion. This is one of those times that their feedback, I don't need to take it. Because my default would have been definitely like, oh no, somebody had a thing. Let me change everything, or let me shift. Their opinion's right, I'm wrong. And it's like, well, no, wait, no, I know what I'm doing, and I know why I'm doing. I know why I'm teaching the way that I'm teaching. And so doing that work actually of distilling my why as a teacher. So this is, if you ever learn with me in any capacity, this is some of the stuff that we work on, is figuring out what your why is as a teacher, because that why was my through line in an uncomfortable situation, very triggered situation for me, to distill it eventually and go, wait, no. That was somebody's opinion on, they wanted something different that I wasn't giving them. And that's okay, because I know why I gave what I gave as a teacher. And if they don't like that, well, hey, that's okay. And if it came as bad feedback about me, that didn't feel good, but hey, guess what? I'm walking away from this scenario in the end more clear on who I am and what I'm teaching. But it wasn't easy.
It sounds like a really great piece of homework. And I think we've mentioned in the past podcasts, like, what's, a piece of advice or like an action or something people can take. And you've always kind of said figuring out your why, because I think you're going to get feedback no matter what. To me, I think of like, you don't know what that person's day looked like. They might be giving you feedback because they're just having a bad day. They might be giving you feedback because you're just not the teacher for them. And it's beginning to understand that you can listen to the feedback and take what actually is supporting becoming a better teacher. And you don't have to like blanket take everything, right? Like people could say, I'm not even going to give an example, but it might not actually be important to you because it's not why you're teaching.
Yeah. But you don't know. And it's going to, all sorts of feedback's going to hit you in all sorts of ways, unless we have that practice and that exercise of being like, okay, well, who am I as a teacher? How do I want to teach? Why am I teaching the way that I'm teaching? Because there's a myriad of ways that we can teach. What is about this way that I enjoy and do it, and so on? Because that's going to inform your how and your what you teach. And so if somebody doesn't come to a class that doesn't align with your what, then it's like, cool, okay, well, it's not me. You're not like, whew. But that's again one of these lifetime practices of, and thank you to this practice of yoga for giving us the tools of self-reflection and being able to handle this discomfort. I found it quite uncomfortable. It was not, maybe other people are easier. Bless you, bless your hearts. I love that you're, if you came into this world with beautiful, clear boundaries, amen. But I think for the rest of us, it's like a painful, beautiful, empowering in the end experience.
Yeah, it's so interesting because it is a journey, right? Like your students back then, they also didn't know what exactly you were. They didn't know that you were, had a TSM turning point with your teaching style and were like, I need to bring some more anatomy based and yada, yada, yada. So yeah, it's like they're going through their own personal journey as students and you're going through your own personal journey as a teacher. So, yeah, I think everyone just be a little bit kinder to each other. Goes both ways.
Yes, right? Absolutely. And that's where, we talk a lot about like the teaching inclusive classes really means creating spaces where where our humanity is centered, where our difference is centered, meaning it's like, I'm a teacher and yes, but I'm also still a person. You're coming to my class and you're also still a person. And can we have these spaces where mistakes are okay? On all ends. Oh, I forgot my left and rights. Oh, I farted in class. Like, I don't know, whatever. Not like Can that be okay? Can that be okay? And that's a pretty profound experience and pretty profound actual embodiment of the practice of yoga.
So I want to mention before we, sign off for this one, we have launched a new YouTube channel. So if you like these types of conversations, if you want to dig in a little bit further, Bree is creating amazing videos. I'm editing them. So I get to watch them before you see them.
And you've done such a good job, FYI. So if everybody goes to the Yoga Teacher Tips YouTube channel, YTT, that like all the colors and the bright, happy vibe of it is Ula. And Ula, it makes me happy every time.
Thanks. I hope you guys hop over there, leave comments here or there, what you're looking for. We're still developing the channel. I'm excited that, we have a video coming up about shoulders, teaching, shoulder movements. There's all these great videos. And if you want more breakdowns or specific ideas, just like please comment, go follow over there. We also have our 200 and 300 hour teacher training coming up right away. You can join any time of the year. It is online, and then you get to jump in with the cohort. Bree, I don't know if you want to mention anything else.
Well, it's wonderful, and you'd be silly not to join the teacher training. No. But really, I'm being playful. But honestly, if you like our podcast and and you find yourself getting so much out of it, and you find this approach and these thoughtfulness and the way that we talk about yoga, and it gives you this yes, and it has you feeling seen and validated, that's what this training does. Then you're going to love, if you want to update your teacher training education, this is the Imagine 7 months of this with other people around the world who are much the same, who are all excited, and it's wonderful. So yeah, join.
I'm also going to leave a link and a coupon code in the description. So if you want to just test out the studio, learn a little bit from Bree. She has amazing move and learn classes. You can steal her sequences. I'm sure she won't mind. So I'll leave that in the description, and you'll be able to do 1 month of yoga with us for $1
at Heart and Bones Online.
Thanks, Bree. Oh yeah, at Heart. Maybe I should tell you where it is, at heartandbonesyoga.com.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Bree.
Thank you, Ula.